So all that lives there.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this for the first issuance of the ERA Jaguar credit, or is this for the ongoing implementation of it? I wasn't sure if how you phrased it at the beginning, if this was for it to be continued to be used, or is this like the process of public comment for the methodology to be implemented from the very onset?
Yeah, for the methodology to be accepted into Regen Registry and then projects to be run off of it through the Regen Registry.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. And on that note, during one of the last environmental stewardship calls, João from ERA Brazil joined and did a really fantastic job sharing about the methodology. And so you can find in the Hilo page, you can find a link to that recording, and he did some just great screen sharing of a slide deck that helps break it down even more. I highly recommend that. Yeah, and the other kind of update and forthcoming public comment is from Roots. And if Giselle is on, it'd be great to have her share some context around that. And that's landing this week. And that is a protocol for regenerative grazing. And those projects will be coming out of South America. And that credit class will be also in the public comment space for public comments to be submitted. So right here, Roots credit class for soil carbon sequestration. Giselle, are you on? Would you want to take a minute to share a little context on this credit class? Do we have Giselle?
I don't know if I see her on here.
Okay. That's all right. Well, this one is exciting in that it sits next to Carbon Plus Grasslands, the methodology native to Regen. And it does focus on soil organic carbon sequestration with some co-benefits of water infiltration and biodiversity. And it's based on the Savory EOV, the Savory Institute for Grassland Health. And I think it reflects a lot of the growing energy in South America around regenerative grazing. So we're really excited to have this land. Working through a lot of the process steps right now around it. And one of them is having the credit class go through public comment. So the engagement is similarly to what I shared and what Tika shared, where you can get on here to review the credit class itself and submit public comments that they will be responding to. And then the Hilo group will be formed to be able to have a discussion around that as well. So yeah, I think that is kind of all for us for today. I thought we could take a couple of minutes just for any comments or questions before handing it over to Foundation. Anybody feel free to. I've been checking chat as well.
I'm curious if there's any updates for those who I have a conflict for the environmental stewardship call, if there are what other active practice-based methodologies, environmental stewardship methodologies are like behind ERA Brazil, and like what their sort of status is. Yeah, just curious.
One is fiber shed. That's the sheep grazing in vineyards. That's something, that's the methodology that I'm working on. That is evolving. We just went through the process of looking for another reviewer. The issue was some of the initial reviewers didn't, you know, they did their review and then they did not follow up to do, basically to respond to my response to their comments. So we're in the process of finding another reviewer, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll get that squared away, and then we'll go out for public comment. So I'm hoping that it's going to be out for public comment by early August. But we'll just have to wait and see. It's really, we're kind of at the mercy of reviewers at this point. And then there's another that's in that realm, Courageous Lands. They went through the first round of review, of expert review, and they're just now in the process of starting to respond to those comments. So there were substantial comments, so it's going to take a little while, and we'll be trying to do some hand holding if we can to help the Courageous Lands team kind of move forward with that. And I don't know if Tika or Rebecca, if you've got others that you can think of that I'm missing.
Yeah, I would say like they're too focused on smallholders that will be quite familiar with Austin. So the GVK around regenerative cotton and using participatory verification, and then Mark Everly Smart Agro around conservation ag and in Cambodia. And they are both focused on, rural smallholder populations and are running into the conundrum of that they have such important work to do on the ground with these communities that it's hard to do the actual methodology writing. But those are in that same group of practice-based methodologies.
Cool, thank you.
Anybody else in the room have any thoughts or questions before we move on to foundation? Alrighty. Well, feel free to drop anything in chat, and I will pull up this to get foundation going. Floor is yours.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Hope you all are doing well. There's a couple of foundation folks here, Nena, Will, and myself, and we all might take a little piece of this larger conversation. I'm not going to go so much into like the direct docs like I have the last two sessions, and do a little bit more high level, like kind of reflections, and try to summarize what I think are salient points from some of the recent conversations within registry and the foundation, and with the larger sort of region network partners and the foundation. And I think they can kind of fall into two broad categories around the sort of work and the attention that the foundation is putting out there. The one relates to the protocol, and another to origination, and a question of how the original mandate of the endowment or the community staking DAO of the foundation can support both, and how to effectively support the protocol development and origination, protocol like governance, I should really say, protocol politics and origination with the endowment pool, and how should that be supplemented or developed, or like what is a strategic set of actions. So the protocol we could generally refer to as like community stake and ownership, some more conventional part of the CS DAO, and also related to token economics working group, which we'll say a little bit about. And origination is more like building the community and the substrate through which good high integrity methodologies can emerge. That's what kind of core contributions can a nonprofit contribute into the space, and how does that work in tandem with the registry and science teams and things like that. So for the context of why you care about the protocol is like the foundation is one of the largest token holders with the endowment. We care about the token health very actively, and we'll say more about that. And we also are in discussion around sort of what could be understood as a region network constitution, which is a long project to think through in collaboration with region network development in the larger ecosystem. What groups govern what parts of this network? Is currently it's pretty much everyone voting on everything now, but is there a more granular and specific set of expertise to governance proposals and things like that that we can develop over time? And the origination side is sort of in supplement to the social capacity building, which I think has been really the core for the last year and a half of the foundation's work. How can we support science, methodology development, and project development? And what do we really mean when we say high integrity credits? What does that look like, not just from a sort of scientific, social, quantitative side, but from the social sort of narrative dimension as well? Okay, you can step forward. Whoever, one of you two who went to the Ko-Fi event, you want to take this one?
Well, yeah, I guess I can jump in, and we've shared about this in a few places, but in case anyone missed it, here's the link again. There's this collaborative finance gathering that had happened in Austria a few weeks ago, and it was really the intersection of alternative economics thinkers who are working on mutual credit and mesh credit and credit clearing, and than crypto folks. And it was, I think, one of the first gatherings where these two communities really got to work together. And I'm excited to think about ways that Regen Network could be more leaned in on this side of things. Is there a slide for the tokenomics thing that I should hold off on? Okay, there we go.
It's landed. It's right here in front of you now. Now you can speak to it. Or once
It was.
Emily steps
Bring it
forward.
back.
Bring it back. Thank you.
So there had been this RFP back in the fall and request for proposals related to token economics, and we hadn't gotten any proposals that fully address what we are looking for. And so the kind of latest iteration is there's this working group that's forming, and so far there's someone named Max who has been starting to formulate it. I just shared a link here in the chat that he's developed. So certainly if you're interested in being involved, you can reach out there. I think the next step at this point is finding some co-funders for the work, due to this being an effort in the spirit of decentralization. Neither Regen Network Development or the foundation should be majority funders of the project, but we can both be minority funders. And so that's one of the pieces that's moving right now, is thinking about who else might be a co-funder, and certainly we'll need other working group members. Yeah, maybe that's all I'll say about that for now. Yeah.
What do we think? You want me to sit here, or would you like to?
It's okay to keep going, I think. Oh, yeah, there's some pictures. Naina, do you want to share anything about your experience at Ko-Fi?
Yeah, one thing that really struck out to me was, it was just a thought exercise for me to actually think like, what could a collaboration between ReFi and Ko-Fi could actually look like. And when we, like the way we are operating right now, we need an external voluntary carbon market to actually have the credit sales happening. And ReFi itself has become a sort of that's my personal opinion. I'm sure everybody has their own when it comes to that it has become an echo chamber of sorts. And I feel like there is potential, and there is a case to be made here that ecological state protocols or like natural assets should be part of our regular economy. Ko-Fi basically what it says, it talks a lot about debt clearing, and if we could include the debt we owe to our natural ecosystems within our regular economy, then probably we don't even need markets in the near future. When I say near future, it's like 10-15 years down the line, but yeah. And with our rights of nature stack that is being built by Austin, the legal stack, which basically allows ecological systems to have bank accounts and legal status in the whole system, imagine we could integrate them into the debt clearing system, and the communities could directly be supported through that for the work that they do, and the people that extract from it have to pay a debt to the ecosystems that they take from. And that could be a cool way to think about a system in the future. However, of course, both systems need to develop a bit more that it can actually be implemented. And yeah, I think work is going on both fronts, and that's exciting.
Thanks, Nana.
I can share a little bit here. The CSR community has been like more and more active on Hilo, and we have been having key discussion, and they have been acting as advisors for the development of the Region Commons protocol and the next cycle of the cohort that we're going to run pretty soon. I think at the moment, the Hilo group of the Regen Foundation is very closed and limited to people that are actually actively involved. I think from the registry side, it's just Becca that is a part of the group. And we did that because to basically encourage the CSR communities to feel confident about taking part in the discussions. And we feel like once we are at a point to open that up to, the larger community and sort of get more comments in there, I think we will incrementally be doing that as we grow. One of the big things that we are all working on is a code of conduct, which is in its draft form right now. And before the cohort 2 process is launched, I think we will need to finalize that to basically maintain the boundaries of our engagement and to also protect our mental sanity and stuff. So yeah, these are the updates for CSR.
Maybe to add on that, there's an active conversation around CSDAO as sort of a representative body of regenerative communities and non-Web3 native communities wanting to go through the governance process and the proposal process using a broadly structured code of conduct, which if you're not familiar, is basically a set of community agreements around how we interact with one another, what kind of culture is supported in conversation, constructive disagreement, and also like a backstop against harassment or discrimination, like according to basically any set of criteria. So that the thought might be that the code of conduct and developing that, at least within the CSDAO or Regen Foundation space, is a good pilot scenario for the community to bring a governance proposal forward, all the way up to Commonwealth, rather than the more informal kind of decisions and discussion that happen in Hilo, Telegram, or the Discord. And I think that should be something that I hope the larger ecosystem has on their radar, as it's a quite legible, like the content of the proposal and what it means is quite accessible, and it's an experiment in making sure that governance is tracking in many different sort of domains of our larger project. So yeah, hopefully there's a governance proposal within the next within the next month or so about that, for its adoption, and I really welcome everyone's participation in that to sort of follow through with the intended aim of Regen Network to really bring the voice of land stewards into this larger economics or crypto economic space. Yeah, and a lot of active discussion also on the Hilo around the size of the next cohort of the community staking DAO. The landscape within which we work is changing all the time, so it doesn't make sense to make a big cohort towards that responds to the present tense, but maybe many more smaller cohorts is a more agile and adaptive model, and that's being actively discussed. So it's cool to see the community staking DAO, basically the first cohort of it really architecting what the subsequent cohorts would look like. So that's just a pin in there, and you can step forward.
I have a quick question, if it's okay, on the
Yeah,
code of conduct. Do you see that being applicable just to CSDAOs, just the foundation, or the protocol, like just in a wider sense? Because I think it might be something that could be pretty handy, just like network wide. So I'd be open to a discussion about it, and not sure if there's anyone you're working with directly from R&D on that.
This COC has come up across various different interactions that Regen has had in the social space. So it's come up with the ecosystem team and with leadership in various forms in the past. So it's definitely like present. You know, I think it could be interesting to understand that there's different sort of community agreements for different arms of the larger org, and they don't have to be the same thing. I think it's interesting if they actually are tailored better towards the particular audiences and context within which different members of the overall network work. So I don't assume that this should be applicable to all of Regen Network, but if it prompts discussion as to why it is or isn't good for that, then I think it's successful. Like it's something to react to. And so, yeah, I think as an organization that's particularly oriented around high integrity relation between people and the environment, right? Relations, so to speak, that this kind of entity is relevant to us, not just so that we can like have clear boundaries around how we interact with people online, which, you know, can be intense or toxic in some ways, but to have someone we can fall back upon on a consistent basis around the culture of foregrounding the voices we want to do.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I would put in a vote for this to be more protocol wide, just in the sense that like it's really needed work. And it is, you know, I think when these things come up, it does affect the whole protocol. And so, yeah, maybe that's a discussion that we can take offline. But I really appreciate the work being done there.
Brad, maybe that would be a great thing to add on Commonwealth when it goes up to be like, oh, should this be protocol wide or not?
I will.
Precisely what it's there for. Cool. So yeah, this is sort of a high level, some reflection of some of an ongoing conversation with the registry and the foundation that's in the really early stages, but this is an invitation and take it at that, not like a proclamation or designation of what is happening. But you know, to date, the foundation has worked very actively to bring social capacity to CS DAOs and external partners so that they own and govern the protocol to the best of, you know, in an evolving way. And that means a lot of capacity building. And so as part of the origination process of Regen Network, I mean, being a kind of anchor in the space, sorry. I have a cold, of like high integrity eco credits, you know, what is we're like looking at what the role of a nonprofit would be in supporting origination process and how might Regen Foundation develop and support a larger scientific or regenerative economic community that incubates methodologies or projects up to a certain kind of critical phase that supports and contextualizes the work that's happening within the registry, but isn't necessarily before, but a more like fertile community that can help bring greater throughput and maybe a set of standards and best practices through which these happen. This is an early part in the conversation. I'm really enthusiastic about that and how to structure funding and allocating resources to this. This is something we can discuss. So I wanted to put that out into the larger space to ask like what types of members of the scientific community should be prioritized. What are your opinions about this? You can step to the next slide, Becca. And maybe some things to reflect on, and this is the last slide for this session, is like, what do when we discuss high integrity credits, how is it beyond like scientific rigor, which is obviously incredibly important, the sort of notion of community identity, the narrative and the context specific aspects of the credit, the sort of fungible and non-fungible dimensions that make Regen what we are, and not just purely an abstraction or purely a one-dimensional carbon tunnel vision project. I would argue that, you know, the social and the scientific rigor are coming together to produce what we would consider to be high integrity. So how can we do that? And I'm curious, this is an open question. Please reach out to me or other foundation folks or folks in the registry as this conversation evolves about who would you nominate to be a part of this out of house or a more external facing community that might incubate methodologies and projects. Individuals, organizations. This is an open invitation as Regen Network, you know, as I have you all's ear to invite reflection on that, because I think as Regen really develops a name for itself along the trajectory it's already on of high integrity credit origination, that the foundation has a sort of pivotal role, an important role to play in this. So I invite that. And I'll close. It's not a slide to say that in the next session, there's been an ongoing partnership between the Regen Foundation and the Earth Law Center around how Web3 can integrate with rights of nature and like rights-based approaches towards ecological agency, and what's the role of payment for ecosystem service markets, or debt swaps, or loss and damage financing, sort of like value-based approaches to interact with the legal frameworks that they have. So we have a tentative outline paper that will be circulating with a small group and set to have some peer feedback and a workshop coming in the later summer into the fall. So if you're interested in the relationship of like non-human legal standing, legal personhood, and how it interfaces with Regen and what Regen does, definitely reach out. It's going to have a lot more airtime in a subsequent session, but I'm just going to point at that just to keep the iron hot. Yeah. That's it for what we've got. Thanks for hanging out and listening. If you have any questions, now is a good time, or you can always DM us.
Yeah, I mean, now this is great time. And I think those are some really great questions to ask to the group, both around on the previous slide around the kind of scientific community to incubate methodologies, and who should be prioritizing in these questions around who would be involved in kind of the out of house work. I think it'd be great to get folks input if you're willing to speak up. I'm gonna put people on the spot, but I bet that we've got some input. I mean, Tika, Ned, Aaron, Ryan, Corey, Erica. Any thoughts?
Nice, you're doing like the teacher thing where you gotta let the silence hang and then call the name. Yeah, it's cool.
Skills. Well, I think when I think about this myself, the dynamics of like the need around scientific community engaging with these methodologies, you know, and as Austin shared, like we've been having these initial conversations, and I think when I think about the types of members of the scientific community to involve, it's quite a spectrum of expertise, spectrum of disciplines, spectrums of even just like applications. So if we have like, you know, those that are like kind of practicing scientists out in the field versus those that are just maybe more actively publishing, bringing all of those different lanes to bear on these kind of gaps around methodologies, I think is really powerful. When I think about our experience so far with methodologies and what the blockers and barriers are, particularly with communities that don't historically have access to, you know, paying someone to be a consultant or a technical expert on a methodology or something like that, or to even have less conflict of interest around it, like expert peer review or things like that. Anybody else? Right. Well, if
Oh wait, maybe if I can just chime in to like help give context, and yeah, consider this a question that's going to keep coming back around, and I think there's a lot there, and it's a big one, so I understand that like it really merits time and space. You know, within a particular rigor of bioregion and ecosystem type and particular ecosystem service and or set of services and benefits and the best practices and management practices related to that, there's a lot of really high level specificity in order to make something high integrity. And that's difficult. You know, expertise is absolutely required in order to produce something of that caliber. In what way can this broader community support getting something so that it doesn't have to have exact like domain specific knowledge per se, but getting it in the ballpark so that it's not off? I think that there's a way with which it can be like primed and prepared to enter into sort of internal review processes and be pretty close. And the question invites itself around, if this happens over and over again, how do we build upon a kind of taxonomy of practices so that people aren't reinventing the wheel? Not to say that they are, but what is the foundation's role in supporting that process? I think that's a really important and urgent conversation to discuss, and it's happening pretty actively in the registry calls with the foundation. So I wanted to socialize it within the larger network. I see Ed has his hand raised, so I'll give Ed the mic. But thanks for taking the time to show up and listen, everybody.
Yeah, I'll just add that there's a lot of stuff happening within the Regen Ag community about all kinds of, you know, what data we need, forms of data, reasons why. You know, real lot of foundational discussions going on. I know there was just a summit about it in Iowa a couple weeks ago, and so I think somehow the bridging of ideas, because otherwise the more each side develops and then doesn't understand that the other side exists, when it is realized as we move forward, it's just going to be tougher to then meld the two. So I think it doing it more early instead of later is probably going to be a good idea. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Here.
Thanks, Ed. I feel like your pulse on Regen Ag is always welcome, and it's a good example of that space where you have everything from, I don't know, avant-garde practices, like lots of different flavors of how Regen Ag is being applied in different places, and at the same time there's a lot of interest in it because of soil carbon, and all the while there's just kind of grasping for economic opportunities, and a need to support regenerative work. I mean, that's one of the environmental stewardship pilots is working with a conservation district in Vermont, and they have a lot of farmers that are not able to access state and federal funding to support their regenerative practices. And they also can't access, creating carbon projects or things like that. So how between the registry work, our work to try to make accessible processes and have the ability to create your own, sit next to the foundation work to incubate and like prioritize the pushing the boundaries. I feel like it's really important to hold it all. Any closing thoughts from anybody? Especially faces that I see. Tika, Will, anybody? So otherwise we can wrap.
No questions, but just a quick comment. I just appreciate the discussion around this. I mean, it's from the software side of things and perspective, like building the tools for the registry, and it's answering questions like this that affects like the development work that we do, and ensuring that we're developing software for the right users and giving them the features and ability to kind of govern those credit methodologies and classes and everything in a safe, secure way through software. So just reflection, more or less, but
yeah,
appreciate these questions.
I think it's a good point. Like what does the full life cycle of all of these different types of credit look like, from these early moments where, someone's working with Regen Foundation and, touching on registry and registry processes, and then actually going to govern and use our functionality in our interfaces. Yeah, I mean, it really touches on the full circle of what we're trying to achieve. It's a good reflection. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for your time and perseverance in accessing Zoom today. And I'll see you guys around. Thanks everybody. Thanks Emily for spinning it up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Becca. Thanks, Emily. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.